Hey there, welcome back to our channel. Let's continue with our series. In the previous episode, we have seen how the payment service is working with the payment gateway. And we have simplified with the help of one diagram, right? As you can see in this sequence diagram, how these things gonna work, right? So in this episode, we're going to create all of these things in practical. If you have not watched that episode, then please go ahead and watch it out right before implementation, right? So let's go to our source code. All right, so here in this source code, you can see we have opened our workspace and we have three services: catalog, order, and user service, right? So let's try to create one more service. So in this case, we're going to add one directory. Let's say add folder to workspace. I think we need to create one. So let's try to create one directory here. This is going to be like payment service, right? So create. Add. So now our payment service directory is created. So let's try to switch back to this payment service directory so we can create all the necessary files together, right? So here inside this directory, let's try to create all of the directory structure very quickly. Perfect. So now we can see we have our source directory. Inside this source directory, you have a config, we have DTO, we have routes, we have service, we have utilities. One more directory may be needed, that is called the types, right? Perfect. So now we have everything ready inside the source directory. So let's try to create a couple of files inside there as well. So let's create file. This is called touch server.ts and expressapp.ts, right? So these are the two files that are going to be needed just to spin our application. Like, and we're going to put some of the codes, but nothing to worry. We are not going to write a lot of codes right there because already some of the codes we have written right here in other services. We can borrow quickly, make the episodes very quickly. So you no need to over and over type all of this stuff. And now let's go back to our root directory, right? So switch back to our root directory. And here we are going to initialize our project, right? npm init. Yes. Now let's try to install a couple of things right here. Right? So we want to see our logs beautifully, and that is tracked in our production server as well as, right? So these are the things are required. And a couple of things we need to add, just like in a dev dependencies. Cool, perfect. So now all of the dependencies are installed. So let's check it out, like whether we have everything, right? So yeah, one more thing we needed, that is called Axios. All right, so because Axios is missing right here, because this payment integration service, like it is payment service, we need to call other service as well as to get the synchronous data, the way we have just a call for our user service, like, you know, from the order and the catalog service, while we need some authorization or authentication from our user service, right? So let's try to add the Axios as well as yarn add Axios, right? Cool, all the dependencies are now added. So let's try to tweak this particular the script, right? This is not going to be test, this is going to be def, right? And we'll be saying, right, ts node src index.js, right? I think this is not index.js, this is called server.ts. Okay. All right, cool. So now our application is ready, right? So maybe we can put some of the other scripts as well as, but those are the kind of step of our deployment process. While we're going to change all of these services to Docker file, then we're going to add some additional steps right here, right? That's a different story, right? So let's try to close this file here, and inside the server.ts, like what are the things we can edit right there. So let's try to go ahead. All right, so now we have all the files, right? And then go to the Express app. Here we are going to add a couple of lines of code. But rather than typing all of the codes, let's go to one of the service. As an example, maybe we can go to our order service. So let's see what are the things out there inside the source. Go to Express app, right? So these are what we need, right? So let's try to grab all of these things from here. And side by side, we can just like open our Express app here as well as. as a first thing, let's try to comment these routes, right? We are going to use some different routes, right? So these are the things are needed. Broker also going to be needed. So let's try to comment it out, all of this stuff also here, right? Then this is giving the issue. This is fine. Like we can just like remove these routes because we are using some different version of maybe Express, right? There is a kind of minor changes out there, so where you cannot directly return this the response, right? So it's a kind of object right now. So let's try to remove this return statement. Then can you see like the error has gone, right? So time to time, while you are updating your libraries, you may have to adjust some of the codes. So that's why I'm suggesting like, you know, maybe we can use some kind of pin person, right? So let's go to use, let's say, pin person of this one. Then let's say you can say XUS also we can use like in a pin person, right? Cross also use, .env we can use, right? Result also specifically use, we can pin version. So what is pin version exactly? So pin version is a kind of, you can see, if you're going to use the correct, then it will going to say like, hey, you use the particular version or maybe a little bit upper one, right? If there's a kind of minor changes, then it will be adjust accordingly. So this is not only the stick with the 1.3.1. So that is what we are doing right here, like, you know, pin version in terms of this whole application going to only, it will be required for this package, not more than above or not more than less than below. So this is what we are doing right here. So you can just go ahead and check it out, like what are the major libraries you are using. So make sure you are using pin version. That's really great practice of Node.js development, right? So rest of all also we need to carry on. Let's go to the util directory. Let's grab a whole directory from here, copy whole directory from order service, right? And inside the source directory, I think we have already util. Yeah, this is utility and it's util. I think maybe let's try to make, we can just like remove this directory and you can just like paste it on the same way. So right now we have utils, right? So it's not supposed to complain, but it is complaining. Okay, complaint has gone, right? Then the similar way for the broker service also we need to grab it, right? So let's try to grab the broker service from here, right? Grab this broker service, copy. Because it's a similar code, right? So maybe a little bit changes we need to do. So that's why we're just like using the similar service. Let's try to add it here, right? So our broker service is now added. Then, but still giving the error. So that's we need to fix it out. Then what else? Yes, so far we are good. Let's go to our broker service here. So it is still giving some kind of errors. So we need to fix those one. Then maybe our Express app will be, it will not complain. And another one you can see like the error handler with the logger also complaining. So those are the complaints we need to fix it, right? So then maybe we can have a kind of proper application. But let's try to add some rest of other stuff also. Let's try to close all the files. And go to order service once again inside the source directory, right? So this time what we are targeting, go to server. Let's grab all those things from server and add the same thing right here is a server, but this time port number, it's 9003, let's say, right? So make sure these are semantical, like we are calling the auth service first, right? The user service port number is 9000, right? Then maybe catalog. Catalog is 9001, I think, right? Yeah, 9001, ordered 9002, and payment will be 9003. So these are the port number. You can keep it accordingly, like to make sure you are not losing track of how you are spinning or the communications, because each and every microservice has their like communication pattern, right? If you see here inside the utils mostly, inside broker and API, we are calling this endpoint, right? Can you see this particular the port number and all? So if you are keeping a kind of semantic numbers, right, then definitely, like, you know, the port number, you will not mess up with the base URL. And this base URL, it depends on where you are deploying. As an example, if you are deploying on Kubernetes, then it will going to be service, right? Then the service, like whatever the service alias you are putting it out. Or if you are deploying in a Docker, then definitely Docker bridge number or something like that way. So what are the port or what are the network you are exposing. So, but good thing is, like, if you are maintaining semantic version, then definitely, like, let's say 9000, 9001 to something, it's going to be easy for you to figure out like which service is giving trouble. All right, so now service we have added everything, all right? So but types we need to add a couple of stuff. As an example, types we need to have the subscription types, and order types are not required mostly. Well, let's grab the subscription type first. All right, so let's try to, maybe we can just like copy this whole file and go to types here, maybe index file as well as, right? Go to types and add it right there, right? So here we're going to tweak in a bit, all right? All of these types, then maybe order types as well as, right? So let's try to grab this one as well as. This is not going to be order types. Maybe we can just like change the file name. Yes. So right now we have pretty much mostly everything, right? Only routes we need to grab. Maybe go to source directory, or it's not required. Maybe we can just rewrite the routes. That's perfectly okay. Inside the config. So what are the configs we have right now? So we have our .env config. That can be fairly like you can get it. So let's try to grab this config as well as and add it right here. All right, so that's enough. All right, so let's go to let's try to close all of the files, save and close. Now we are purely inside of this payment service. So let's try to solve one by one all of the problems first, right? So in the server, right? Server, it seems looks good, and this is going to be 9003. This is cool. Express app we have, and utils also we do have, right? Then when our server is going to be up, then we can just like maybe we can just like follow the streamline downstream stuff. So go to express app right now. So right now only giving the trouble the handle error with logger. So let's try to fix this one. So if you go to handle error with logger, and here somewhere we can see this is return, right? So let's try to remove this return from here. And then it's fixed, right? Then it's fixed. Cool. Then now the most important thing, we need to just create the routes, right? So because these are the cart routes, that is we have added for the other services, order service. But right now we need to have something else for our payment service. So let's try to create one route here. All right, so here inside the routes, let's try to create one file. This is going to be our payment. So let's add some code quickly. These are the two only routes are needed in the payment service, right? So we could have added this payment service like inside the order service. Already I have explained like why it is not going to be viable if we are going to keep it inside the order service, right? So finally we have just exported the router, right? So it doesn't matter whether we are returning something or not, right? So let's try to return at least payment verified, payment successful. So we'll be putting our hands in a bit, right? So let's try to at least hook it up everything, whole pipeline. So here you can say import the payment routes, from payment routes, and we can say app here, app use payment routes, right? So now our routes are hooked up, right? So we can just like go ahead and do this stuff. So our payment routes are hooked up right now. So let's try to fix what are the pending things right here in initialize broker, right? So here what we are doing right there, we're initializing the stuff, but our payment service will not listen to anything, because payment service, if you see in this diagram, right? And here somewhere I have mentioned, you can see payment service only what it is doing, right? Payment service is a publisher only, right? So that is always need to keep in mind. Like microservice, while we are building microservice, it doesn't necessary to be that microservice has to be consumer as well as yes, it is need to be consumer sometimes, but depends on use cases. So you can see in the payment service, right? So we don't have any consumer, because payment service is not going to update anything to the payment gateway. It's a kind of one-time or one-way trip, you can say. It's creating the payment, getting the information back, that's all, right? It is not like doing much more things right there. And other services also, while we are just creating the payment, it is just notifying, right? It's not listening to the other services from as a kind of consumer. So that's why we don't need anything like as a kind of consumer part from here, right? So let's try to get rid of these consumer things right there. And here also these are not required. if necessary, then maybe you can just like go ahead and add all of this stuff. And here also only one message we are going to keep, that is called send payment update message, because only we need to notify while our payment is going to be updated, not payment created, because payment created is a kind of separate event. This is kind of you can say we are initiating the payment or creating the payment, but we have not received any events from our payment gateway, or maybe user has abandoned the payment. Then it doesn't make sense to inform to the order service, gonna say, hey, payment is abandoned or something. Maybe user can come back and it can complete, right? So there are some scenarios. So let's try to stick with this plan, like, send the payment updates, and data we can just like, maybe we can put unknown, right? And the message we can say data, right? Whatever data we are just like putting inside the message. This is not going to be catalog event, so let's try to rectify all of this stuff first, right? So here, this is also not required because we are not subscribing anything, right? The consumer part also you can get rid, right? So then our broker stuff, it's going to be very lean. And now let's go to our order event, this one. This is the subscription type, that is where maybe we need to tweak a little bit. And what we can do here, instead of this order event, it has to be meaningful, right? So let's try to change this order event to, right? Change this order event to call payment. All right, payment event. Then this is going to be create payment. Create payment and create payment. Then and another one is going to be update. Update payment, and this is going to be update payment, right? Then topic type, we can say payment event, and this is not required because only we are okay, this is not payment event because we are not listening to any events, right? We are only pushing that particular the topic to a certain events that is already been created. So the scenario will be just like, while our payment will going to be created, then where it will going to push. So if you see here, payment will push to our order service, nowhere else, right? Only just like, for order service. So if we need to push to the order service, then if we're going to create a kind of separate event, then how order service is going to subscribe, right? So it's going to be two different things. So the order service is going to subscribe only for order related events. So that's why what we need to do, this is not going to payment events. So I have actually renamed this one. That's why it got together renamed. So this is called order events. So make sure like these events are identical to orders, right? So if you go here, source directory, and go to broker, and not broker exactly, to service, I think. Broker service, right? Broker service. Yes, the order events. This is the same one, right? So let's try to make sure that this is the same. And while we are sending the message, this is not going to be order event anymore. This is going to be our payment event. Perfect. So now our subscription type we have just resolved, right? So let's go to once again to the broker service, right? So this is going to be our payment event, and here also payment event, payment event, and this is going to be update payment, right? So we're not creating, updating, and not catalog and order events. Cool. So our why it is complaining? Okay, I think we missed one comma right there, right? Cool. So our broker stuff also we have sorted out, right? So everything is cool right now. So in the types, do we have this? Okay, these order types are not required. I think we have just like copied unnecessarily. Let's try to get rid, right? Right. Now, yeah, this one as well as. Okay, cool, all good. Then in the express side, we have initialize broker. When initialize broker is going to initialize, then it will going to connect to the producer. Then at any point of time, we can directly send a message from anywhere. Now let's go deeper a little bit, right? So let's go to our routes, right? So here we are going to add a couple of codes where maybe we can hook up with our create payment and verify to the payment, where once it is verified, then we can just send the send the message to our order service. So here inside the routes, first thing we need the middleware. Can you see, like, while we're creating the payment, then anybody can create the payment. That is what we are not going to accept, right? So only the authenticated user can create the payment. And the create payment is going to happen against of certain order ID. So that is also we need to consider. So in this case, let's go to our one of the other service. Let's say go to routes and let's grab this middleware, because anyway, this middleware is going to be required, right? So let's copy this one here and again, go back to our inside the routes and add this middleware here. So now we have our middleware here, but it is complaining it doesn't have the user in the request object. So somehow we need to create this one, right? So in that case, what we can do directly, we can just like go inside this DTO, right? Maybe from the other service, let's say go to order service, go from here, source directory, and inside the DTO, we have the user model. So this is what exactly we're looking for. So let's try to grab this one and add it right here, right? Inside the DTO, all right, paste. All right, problem solved, right? So you can see, like, the error has gone, I think. Yeah, error has gone. Now our middleware is ready, but in the payment routes, it is totally empty. So somehow we need to create our service, but this time we are not required any kind of repository, because this payment service is not going to store any data to database, because it's a kind of intermediary service, you can say, all right? So where it will communicate with other service and notify certain information, right? So let's try to do that first then. We're going to create one service inside the service directory. That this is going to be payment service. And here inside this payment service, we're going to create two functions. And first parameter, we need the user ID, right? The user ID, right? This is going to be number, and second parameter will be our order ID. This is what we are looking for, right? Order ID. This is going to be also number, let's say, right? And third parameter, while we are creating the payment, then somewhere we need to create the payment. This time it is not going to be repository. We can say payment gateway. Payment gateway can be anything, right? Say any payment gateway. So this create payment function only know that we are going to create the payment. So whatever payment gateway we are passing that particular the function, maybe object or whatever, it is going to trigger the payment gateway create payment, something like that. So we are not sure which payment gateway, let's say, we are going to use. Then we can say unknown profile, right? We're going to use this unknown to something else, right? But let's keep it this way for a while, right? Then finally, we're returning some kind of data. This is going to be first, let's say, secret, right? Secret will be some secret, my super secret, right? Let's say after that, we need to have one public key, let's say. All right, so this public key will be going to, you can say, this is super, right? Not super. My public key, my super public key. Then finally, we need to provide the amount as well. So make sure, like, our front-end application will not get confused, like, whatever the amount we are passing it all right? So this is, it has to be, amount has to be fetched from the order service, not from, we are not going to accept anything from the front end, because we don't know, like, what kind of data it can be injected from the front end. Maybe a kind of hacker is going to be sitting in between and it's going to be like inject some kind of value right there, right? So that is not we are accepting. So we will be calling order service, and order service will going to provide some kind of data. Then based on those data, we will be creating our payment. So here are a couple of steps we are going to follow. The first step will be our get order details from order service, right? Then create a payment, new payment record, right? Then we can say call the payment gateway, to create payment. Then what we are going to do, we are going to return this one. Let's not require. Return the payment record, not payment record. We can say return the payment secrets, right? So as I explained, like, we are not going to use the inbuilt the payment feature. We are going to use the customized one, so you can have enough freedom to design your own stuff. This is what normally the e-commerce companies are doing, right? They are not relying on inbuilt features. The maybe some countries, they're accepting only emails and card numbers. Some countries are needed maybe more than that, let's say address, postal code, just to verify the fraud situation and all. So this is cool, right? So let's create another function. And so that is going to be, again, the similar kind of stuff. Whom we are calling to verify to payment gateway. That is what we are going to do. Here also we are going to do a couple of steps. As an example, first thing, the call payment gateway to verify payment. Then second thing, like, the update order status through message broker, right? And the final thing, like, return the status, right? Return the payment status. But this is, right? So you can say this is not required. This is not necessary. Not necessary. Just for response to front end. Right, because before getting the status, right? Before getting the status, the front end will beforehand, it will get to know, like, if you see in this diagram, right? So here, let's say here, if you see in this diagram here, beforehand, our payment service will get the payment status. The customer will get to know, like, whether payment was successful or not, right? Because already order has been created, but payment service internally need to update the order status. So that is what we are doing right there, right? So customer will not bother at all, like, whether order status got updated or not, because customer is only care about payment successful, I'm done, right? So while our payment service will receive to the redirect call, right? At that time, it will verify the status and it will update the order status, right? So that is what we are doing right there, right? So now our service calls are ready, right? So let's go to our payment routes once again. And inside this payment routes here, we are going to hook it up all of this stuff. Here in the payment routes, let's try to import a couple of things. So first things, import, right? Import from, we can say middleware. And what we're going to do, we're going to add the request authorizer, right? This is needed. And second thing, import service, start as service from service and the payment service, right? So because we are going to use the payment service. And right after the routes, let's try to create one payment gateway object, const payment gateway. We are just simply passing empty object for a while, but we're going to replace this payment gateway with something else, right? And let's try to hook it up together. But you can see, like, all these routes, right? So both of the routes, we are just, like, putting very basic routes. So let's try to add a couple of things right here. As an example, the request will be our express request, right? Request will be express request. So make sure, like, you are selecting the correct request from here. Then response also going to be same, right? Response will be our express response. Express response interface. And the similar applies for the next function as well. As next will be next functions, right? Cool. So I think we have everything right here. And this is not going to be colon. This is going to be comma. So now, right after create this call, like, while we're going to create calling this create payment routes, right? It's a kind of post call. Then we need to authorize our request, right? To validate the correct user. So request authorizer will go here. Then the similar applies for this function as well. As let's try to put it here as well as, right? Cool. So both of the functions are right now protected, right? Now what we need to do, we need to grab the current user, right? So if we see here, right, in the request authorizer, we are requesting the request header only, just to make sure, like, our authorizations are present correctly. And what you can do, you can directly return the error also, right, from here. That's also you can do. Then you no need to validate here, right? Once again, just for if the user is exist or not, right? So if we have a multiple routes, then definitely I would recommend to add everything in the middleware, right? So if you really need the user that is has to be mandatory to in order to process further with your request, then you have to place it right here. In our case, though it is required, but still what we need to do, we need to pass this, like, this is not only authorizing the routes. It's moreover, we are authorizing routes plus we are grabbing the client user as well. So that's why we have to have one more check right here. So this is called, we can say const user. User will be our request.user, right? So we're grabbing the user here. And we will check like whether if we have the user present or not, right? If we don't have user present, then definitely I would say we are going to call the next function, right? So because we're going to use to centralize the error handling, the way we did for our other microservice as well as simply throwing the error just like in a user not found, right? And simply return from here as well as, right? Perfect. So now we have our authorized user here. Now we are going to call our service to create the payment, right? So before that, what we need to do, we need to make sure like all these requests are async because we are going to perform some operation here, right? Async. And here also it's going to be async. Then this service we are going to call. So let's try to make it small later because it's a kind of instance we are going to use, right? And now we can say const response will be await, then service dot create payment, right? Then create payment will take 3 parameters, right? First one is the user ID, second one is the order ID, third one is our payment gateway. So let's try to provide all of this stuff. So user dot ID you can say, right? Then we are providing some kind of numbers right here. And this number we are going to grab from our request, right? So const, let's say request body, right? And here we are saying order ID, order number or order ID, whatever, right? So this order number we are going to say here. Perfect. So now we are returning, like we are providing all of this stuff, and then we need to return this response as well as. So we can simply return this response here. We're gonna say data will be response, right? And now this create payment is done, right? But maybe we can just, what we can do, maybe we can try catch, like, put a kind of try catch also to the whole stuff. This is not required, but this one we can say from here, try catch, right? This error will be, you can say next error, right? Then just put all of this stuff. It's a good practice to not to break the application flow, right? So rather than handling in many places, maybe you can throw it on one place. That is, you can do. Now go to the create payment. Then we are simply returning all of this stuff. Then, but we are not performing any operation here. The similar way we are going to do for our this get payment ID also, right? So this is the same thing we're going to do. Let's try to grab this user from here, and we can do the same thing here, right? User not found. Then again, we are going to say await, right? Because this time anyway we are going to send the message up to 200, right? We don't care whether like our broker has got success or not, right? Because this is a kind of simply, you can say fire and forget, right? Frontend will call this URL and frontend will not waiting for the response. So it doesn't matter like what are the status code we are sending. We can say like payment verification complete, let's say. Completed, right? So we are not explicitly saying like payment verification success or failure, or that is customer already, customer will aware about that one, right? And now what we're gonna do, we are simply going to call await, right? Service. Then we can say verify payment, and here we're simply providing the request, or maybe what we can do, we can grab the payment ID here, right? Const payment ID from request parameter ID. Then we can say like if payment ID doesn't exist, then payment not found, right? Maybe we can just like return from there, because this specific parameter is essential to verify the payment, right? So let's try to provide this payment ID, and then payment gateway. Cool. So now we're good at this point, right? So again, we can just like wrap it up with the try catch here, and next error, and just like move this one from here to here. Cool. I think this one also go here. It will not fall back right after the catch, right? So we are hooked up everything correctly, right? Then one thing we need to do here, because as soon as we are going to create the payment, right, then we need to notify to our message broker to send some kind of data, right? So in that case, what kind of data we are going to send? So let's go to our DTO. Let's create one more file. This is going to be our order, you can say order model .ts, right? Because while our application, this payment service, is going to call our order details, right? Then somehow we need to patch the order details. As an example, the order ID. We have order ID, but still we need more information in terms of like, you know, what kind of payment, like how much money, or maybe form of let's say this application only for only one country. Then certainly you can, like, you know, pass only one payment, the currency. But what if, like, if there are more currencies going to involve, all right? So there are some few informations we will be required from our order service. So that data model we need to create first. So let's try to create that one first, right? Go to order model. Here we're going to say export interface in process order. You can provide a kind of meaningful name. So it can be provide more meaning in terms of like what model exactly going to do, right? This model, what is the purpose exactly it's going to be used for that particular model. So you can define it accordingly. All right. So that's why maybe I'm not be able to provide a meaningful name, but still you can go ahead and do, or maybe provide a precise one, right? So let's go with this one in process order. Let's say in my case, right? Then order ID is a number. That's I'm not very much concerned about the ID. That is the order ID stored in our database, right? Then what we can say, rest of order stuff, order number, that is we need to be careful because this order number has to be matched with the current order number, right? Then the status will be string, because you can imagine one order, all right? The customer try to make, let's say customer try to make the payment, right? Or maybe the order already been marked as a kind of cancel due to not be able to fulfill or something, right? Then right before making the payment, we need to inform the customer, hey, this order we not be able to make the payment, right? So order is already canceled, maybe due to some reason, or maybe sales team already taken care, like gonna say, hey, we cannot fulfill your order. That's why we're going to cancel your order. Please don't make the payment. But customer didn't see the email also. This kind of like edge cases, sometimes it happen, right? So that's why status is going to be required to make sure right before create the payment, the order status is in progress or pending or something, some certain state. So user can make the payment. Then customer ID. So this is essential because we're going to assign this customer ID while we're going to make the payment to provide to the payment gateway. So payment gateway can have a kind of track. I'm gonna say, hey, this payment has a customer ID this one, order ID this one, right? Or amount of this one, something like that. So these are, you can say it's a kind of metadata we are providing to our payment gateway. So that's why we're tracking it all of the information. Then last one, you can say amount. That is essential because amount that it is coming from the order, that is only we are going to create, not from our front end, right? Then last but not least, you can say created at. We can provide this one also, all right? But just for sake of in terms of some data, if we need to pass it on to the payment gateway, then maybe we can accept this one, but it's not mandatory, right? Only mandatory information is going to be our status, customer ID, amount, and order number. So these are the things, right? Cool. Then our model is ready to use, right? Then what we can do, let's go to our broker, right? Because we have our model, right? And if you see in the payment service, while we are patching this detail, somehow we need to call the API call, just we did in our broker here, right? If you go to broker, then we have our API call. So these are the API calls, maybe we need to tackle it, right? So first of all, validate user is gonna work, right? Then one of them, maybe this one is not required. Stock details is not required. These are also not required, right? Maybe user is needed, right? User is needed, right? Then this is not going to be catalog. I think this is going to be our order, right? Order service-based URL, let's say. We can say order service-based URL, right? Then order service-based URL was what? It was, I think, 9002, right? Then this is not going to be get product details. You can say get order details. Get order details, right? And this is going to be order number, right? Order number. And this is perfect, right? Then a couple of more things we need to pass it on, because you can see here, right? And while we're trying to call it, right? This payment routes, right? While we are trying to call it, maybe we need to expose one endpoint from the order service as well as, right? So based on that scenario, maybe we need to pass the header as well as. So we are not considering header for a while. Maybe we will do it a bit later stage when our payment service is completely like we have covered everything. Then on the time of the test, we will consider like whether we can make it this internal URL or maybe it's a kind of public URL, because customer also need to know, like, you know, whether the order by ID. But that's a different URL. Maybe we can expose to the customer, but for this payment service also, maybe we can expose separate URL. But usually microservice, what microservices does, like microservice, it's communicating with a kind of certain internal URL that is not exposed publicly, right? So that only can be reachable with the help of, let's say, if you're deploying your microservice in one machine, all right, in using, let's say, Kubernetes, or maybe using some different, let's say, Docker or some other way around, then it is, let's assume that's a very simplified process. You have two applications running in your machine, right? Then you no need to expose to the public URL, right? Then you can directly call localhost 9000 to localhost 9002, right? So these are exactly, it's a kind of like, you can say, internal URL. But what if, let's say, if you want to reach to my machine, all right, then what I need to do, I need to expose some URL to you. Those are called public URL. Then the front end will be able to reach to our application using the public URL, not the private URL, right, or internal URL. That is what maybe we can do. But that's a different topic, right? So maybe we can cover in future in some videos regarding how we can protect our microservice and all. So now let's go to our API here. Then we can say get order details, order number, and we can say orders, let's say orders. And here we are going to provide the order number. Then we can say checkout. Right. So this is a kind of like CHE checkout. All right. So this is a kind of explicit URL that is we are going to call from our microservice, right? The payment microservice, just to make sure like we're getting right data, right? And definitely it's a kind of get URL, right? And this is not a data product right here, response data. We're gonna say order in process order, right? That is what we're going to grab it from there. So cool. Now we can call this get order details, and we can simply pass to this the order number, and we can as a response we can get this kind of like, you know, data structure. So we need to make sure like this specific URL, right, this specific endpoint we are accommodating from order service as well. So now let's go to our here. I'm gonna close the rest of all the files, right? It's making confusions. Close all, then go to our here in the payment service, and here we can directly call this one, right? Const order, or maybe directly we can say order await, right? Get order details. So what was the function right there? I forgot that one totally. It is called get order details, right? Right. Get order details, right? Here simply just pass to the order ID. That's all, I think. Cool. Perfect. So now if we are getting the order, right? If we have the order .id, right? Order ID, or maybe we can say order .user ID, right? Customer ID equal not equal user ID. Then we are going to say throw some kind of error, user not authorized to create payment, right? Right. Maybe this can be happen like sometimes maybe you have already logged in with a different account that it has a different maybe what is called access token, all right? And you are trying to make the payment from a different tab, sometimes it's gonna happen. So that's why we're saying we're patching the order ID, but the order customer ID and the user ID is the same or not, because this user ID we can get it from here, right? So from the authorized token, right? So that is what we're checking it out. Cool. So I think we're pretty much good at this point right there, right? So now what we need to do, we need to go to our order service. So let's go to our order service, go to our routes here, right? And here inside the order routes, we're going to expose one more route here. All right, so here underneath of all of the functions, so let's try to use one more. This is going to be our router.get, we can say get, and the endpoint was like, order ID checkout, right? This is the endpoint. So then here we can grab the order ID that is passed from that particular URL, right? So let's try to access that one. So now we can see we have our order ID, and we can just like get the order details also. But inside this service, we don't have this this function, right? So we need to create this function. So now let's go there, right? Inside we can say here user service, right? So go to order service, and underneath of everything, right, we can create one function. This is going to be, we can say, so here underneath of all of the functions, let's try to create one. So here inside this function, we're going to find our current order. Let's try to find it out. So we can say const order will be our await repo find order by ID, right? Then we will check, like, if we don't have any order, then throw some kind of error. I'm gonna say, hey, order not found, right? Then we can just like construct the requirements, just like we did for our payment service. All right, so here if you see in this order details, right, so we have this in process order, right? So let's try to grab this one here as well as, and we need to create a model exactly the same way, right? This is the thing we are going to return from our order service to payment service. So let's try to do that one. So inside the DTO, right, we can say in order request, in a similar way we can just like create one more. This is going to be in process order, let's say, right? Then let's go to our order routes once again, right? So here we can say this one is not going to be order details, checkout order, maybe checkout, yeah, so checkout order. And let's go to our checkout order, and here we are going to construct that particular model. You can say const checkout order will be in process order, and here we will be going to provide the required data, just like our ID will be order ID, then order number will be order number, then amount will be just like whatever amount right there, right? And everything is ready right there. Then simply return this one, return this checkout. Cool. Can you see this is very simplified, right? So we are just like simply checking it out, like whether the order is right there or not, and we are just constructing the similar kind of format that is expected by our payment service. Now our payment service is like, it's ready to integrate the payment stuff, right? So what we can do in the next episode, we're going to handle our payment gateway. So we'll be going to create some kind of service or maybe some kind of package or utility module, which is going to help us to not only pass the significant payment gateway, maybe we can have a multiple payment gateway, right? So that payment gateway will comply some kind of format, just like we did for our repository. You can see if you go to repository, right? Order repository, we have a type, right? So we don't care like what order database it's being used inside this database, like order repository type, but only we care about the create order has to be create an order, and it has to return some number. Find order also, it has to find some order and return some kind of type. So we care about all of this stuff, right? So that means at any point of time, if you need to change your database, then you no need to touch all of the logic, all of the functions. You just like, change the implementation here, right there. It's gonna work as it is, your application. The similar way we are going to apply for our payment service as well as this gateway. That's why actually I have marked as kind of unknown. And inside util, maybe we are going to create one type. It's for, let's say, for the payment type. And that payment type, we're going to pass it on. And this payment type can have a create payment, verify payment, and etc. Feel free to give it a try. I'm sure like you people are already know enough how this thing's gonna be can get it done in a proper way. But nothing to worry. In next episode, we are going to cover that one as well as, and we will going to test it out like all of the communications once we are creating the payment, how it will going to behave with the microservice, right? So then we are going to design a very teeny tiny web page, right? Just like 5 to 10 minutes spending, we're gonna create that one. Then we will test our payment flow right there, right? Then I'll be very happy to see you in another episode. Bye bye.